computer. All right, so we have started recording and it is 10:05, so we will start this session. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Beth Kilmarks and I will be your Zoom host. Our presenters will get started shortly. This is a reminder to keep yourself muted throughout the presentation unless the presenter indicates otherwise. If you have a question, please use the raise hand feature, which is located in the reactions icon, or type your question into the chat box. We will do a question and answer period after the presentation. Please be aware that this presentation is being recorded and will be available for viewing after the conference. Live transcriptioning has been enabled. You can turn it on or off using the live transcript feature. You can change the view by clicking on the view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We recommend the speaker view. At the close of the presentation, I will be putting an assessment survey in the chat box. Please fill out the survey for each session that you attend. Now I will turn it over to our speaker to introduce themselves and start the presentation. And I just have to put one note in here. Despite my attempts to do a poll, I was not able to do that. So I will be entering into chat 6 questions that the presenters would like you to select. And please put the number in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, and let us know which of the questions you would like to have answered at the end during the question and answer period. And so I am going to turn this now over to Lisa Lewis.
Thank you so much, Beth. And thank all of you for attending our presentation this morning. It's great to see everybody coming together to learn more about how we evaluate our chat services. Our presentation today is called Let's Chat, Improving TAMU-CC Reference Services One Chat at a Time. My name is Lisa Lewis. I am the Director of User and Research Services. And I am joined today by my colleague, Aida Monteferro, and I will let her introduce herself and then she'll get us started on the presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aida Monteferro, and I'm the Reference Services Coordinator responsible for the 24/7 chat operations at Bell Library. And now for today, we have 2 objectives. Number 1 is to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of employing a chat evaluation program. And number 2 is to examine everyone's approaches to reference evaluation to determine whether the implementation of transcript review with a rubric would enhance your services.
Thanks, Aida. So I'm going to just share a little bit about TAMU-CC, Texas A&M Corpus Christi. We celebrated our 75th anniversary in 2022, and we have a little over 10,500 students currently. We are a doctoral research institution with several doctoral granting programs. Carnegie says that we are an R2, a high research activity campus. We're a Hispanic and minority serving institution. And we have around 85 total academic programs spread across 6 colleges, I think. And we have 411 full-time faculty and of course a number of part-time and adjunct faculty as well. So that's a little bit about TAMU-CC. And now, Aida, I think you're going to talk to us a little bit about our reference services.
Yes, so Bell Library provides in-person and online reference services. This includes our 24/7 chat, which is monitored by 5 librarians and 3 graduate assistants, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and after hours, including nights and the weekends. It's been monitored by co-op librarians from Springshare. We also answer questions by the desk, at the desk, phone, through consultations, emails, by creating FAQs on our website, and we're currently working on the library DIY guide. Now, some statistics from the past academic year. We had 448 chat interactions, 69 questions by mail, and 10 questions by text for a total of 527. And in person, we had 1,292 people coming at the desk, 214 by phone, and 7 consultations by appointments. We have a total of 211 FAQs with over 15,000 views.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aida. So this is where I talk about my experiences with our reference services here. I joined the library in December of 2010, and I became reference and instruction coordinator in 2012. So for the next 10 to 11 years, I guess, I was the reference coordinator here. And so as the reference coordinator, of course, I was responsible for scheduling and training, also hiring and training graduate assistants. The whole time I've been here, we've had at least one graduate assistant. That's where we started. And then we eventually went to 2 graduate assistants. And then when we combined with our circulation desk to create a single service point, we added additional graduate assistants as well. And so I was responsible for training them. And I never felt like I did enough to give consistent feedback to our GAs. And bearing in mind, of course, that we don't have a library school. And so our GAs are certainly research savvy, and they're doing research in their classes, but they aren't library school students. And they are not imbibing, library spirit in their classes, in their program. They're not envisioning themselves as professional librarians when they graduate. Although we have converted a few over to librarianship. But, it's a different kind of experience than it is when you are my previous institution. We had a library school. Very different working with these GAs. So I always felt like they need a little bit more guidance, a little bit more training, and a sort of acculturation to library values, library services, our priorities, right? So I never really felt like I was able to do enough, because I wasn't just a reference coordinator. I was also coordinating instruction, and I was managing other librarians, and I was doing all the other things that we librarians do. I did attempt to do beyond just me glancing over chats on a regular basis. What could we do to do more with this? And so I started an approach where we had 6 people who reviewed chats. I got my professional librarians together. We reviewed them, and we each took a week. And so it was like a 6-week window, basically, during which we reviewed every chat. And people just went and looked at the chats, and they gave me feedback, called my attention to problematic interactions, and made suggestions for improvement. And we were able to leverage LibAnswers for this. So we could create tags, as you know, in LibAnswers, and we could tag the ones that needed follow-up. And then the reviewer would let me know, and also we had a person who she was currently in library school. So she was also kind of learning the ropes of reference service, which was great. She was our direct GA supervisor at that point. And I would kind of collaborate with her, and we would decide who needed feedback, and then either she or I would give the feedback to the GAs. So pros, it did involve all of the other librarians who were doing Ask Us services. And that's great, because you're getting different perspectives, and different people will focus on different things, and you get a variety, right? And it wasn't an overwhelming amount of work for any one person, which was good too, because everybody's busy, right? But we were only reviewing all the chats within a 6-week window, as opposed to spreading it out more over time. So what happened to the other chats at other times? And as I said, I tried to glance over chats, but I wasn't going to always be mentioned. And because we were incorporating everyone, and everybody had their own perspectives, this also had a downside in that people focused on different things. And we weren't necessarily really building a culture of reference service among ourselves as a group. We were just going in there as ourselves, as we see ourselves as reference librarians, and responding to these chats from our own perspective. So it didn't necessarily help strengthen or emphasize the commonalities that we all want to see, whether you're a professional librarian or you're a graduate assistant, in the interactions that we have with our patrons. So let's set the scene. Here we are, been doing this for quite a while, never really felt happy with it. Always wanted to do more, but couldn't really figure out what that was going to look like. Well, I went to a webinar. This isn't usually where someone says, my life was changed by going to a webinar, but this really did open my eyes to at least something to try, right? A different approach to try. The title of the webinar was Model Reference Behavior. I've provided the link and a QR code here. It is available online, so you can all go watch this thing if you want to. The title does not really, I don't think, get to at least not the meat of the webinar that really struck me, which was how these librarians at Southern Methodist University in Dallas developed a method of chat evaluation that involved everyone, that involved a kind of a rubric of these are our expectations, these are the behaviors we want to see everyone doing, and then developed or employed a survey to allow the librarians to review each chat and complete a survey form for each chat they reviewed, and then submit that information for the reference coordinator. So I saw this webinar and I was like, now that's different. Okay, it's consistent with a rubric. It seems reliable. I could get everyone involved, but it wouldn't be too hard because they just have a little survey to fill out. I'm really interested in this. Well, then the next thing that happened was we had the opportunity to hire a reference coordinator. And this was the first time in 12 years that we had been able to hire a librarian who just had reference service as their primary focus. We have our instruction person, we have our student success person, we have a SCOLCOM person, but we've always in the past bundled in reference service coordination with something else. And so we had this chance, maybe now would be the time we will hire this person and maybe we can find a better way to do this. So just realized I never got rid of that dialog box. Sorry, you guys. So we hired Aida and it's been wonderful. We're so delighted to have brought her on board. And she is our new reference services coordinator. And together we talked about how do we try what SMU does in our own library. And so our next section of this presentation is Aida talking to you about how that went.
Yeah, so like Lisa mentioned, I'm the new reference services coordinator. I actually transferred from Texas A&M in San Antonio, and I see some of my colleagues here, so hi. So when I started here a year ago, Lisa and I had conversations about implementing an evaluation for the chat services, and she mentioned the SMU webinar, which I watched, so we implemented it, and I started a survey on LibWizard. And after talking, we decided to do 1/3 of the chat evaluations because there were so many. And at the beginning, I was just evaluating them by myself, seeing how that went. And just some numbers from January, I evaluated 15 out of 44. And then I started asking my colleague librarians to help, and they started volunteering and also helping me evaluating. And in February, we did 19 out of 58. March 26 chats out of 79, and on April 16 evaluations out of 50. And we actually just started with our May evaluations yesterday. We had a total of 39 chats, from which we're going to evaluate 13. This allows me to provide live feedback to our GAs, but also implement some questions that might arise during the trainings, and also create FAQs based on what the patrons are asking. And can we go to the next page?
Yes.
Thank you. And here I just added some screenshots of how the evaluation looks. We pretty much followed the model that SMU had, starting with asking about the chat shift, the date of the transcript. We also asked for the chat ID, making it easier for me to go and check. We also have the transcript link, which is optional, and the initial question. And we made sure to add the person that is reviewing the transcript. And the main thing that differs from the SMU evaluation and us is that we decided to add the chat operator's name. That allows me to know who I am reviewing, and also if I need to speak to them directly about anything that happened during that chat. One of the main topics that we covered is build relationship. We want to make sure that our chat operators begin with a greeting, they're using a friendly tone and a professional tone. Also, if they close the interaction, and many times that does not happen because once a patron gets the answer, they just disconnect right away. Sometimes they're nice, they say thank you, sometimes they just disappeared. So our goal is to get to that point where we're able to close the interaction. And if we created a ticket, was there something that we needed to follow up with? And then for the next section, we also have, could you please move to the next slide? Thank you. For the next slides, we have where this present in the chat, and we look for if the operator asks any questions, ask for clarification, did they determine affiliation? And this is something that comes up a lot where we often forget to ask for the affiliation. So I read some chats where we get to the point that we are guiding the patron on how to get to a database, or we send the link to an article, but then they ask us, well, we're not able to see it. And that's when we ask, oh, are you affiliated? And they say, no, we're actually from another city or another country. So it's very important for us to keep that in mind, to ask for the affiliation. That way it saves us time and we can refer them to their public library or to request an ILL through their closest public library. And we also have a section for instruction where they're able to teach something to the patron. Did they point to an FAQ or mention the guides? And also if they send the appropriate links, and if they answered correctly, did they send the right information to them? And lastly, for the evaluation form, we just recently added the section that says, do we need to bring this to AIDA's attention? Because I reviewed so many chat evaluations, sometimes I miss something that I had to bring to GA attention. So this will allow me to see it like a red flag. I need to put this as a priority. I need to talk to them immediately about this that's happening. Another thing that we add is, do we need to update our research guide, or do we need to create an FAQ? Is this something that we need to fix on the website? Do we need to add it into a training or follow up with a staff member? We also added comment section. And of course, at the very end, we mentioned that this survey is based on the SMU chat evaluation.
Right. I realize this slide violates every rule of how to make a PowerPoint slide that there ever was, but you know, these days, a lot of times people are accessing this information later. They may see the presentation without ever actually, see the file without actually viewing our presentation. So I wanted to have this information. This is an example of some librarian feedback I solicited specifically from a librarian who had done the evaluation as we used to do it before in the past, and who has now experienced this new approach to evaluation, just to try to solicit her opinions about this approach. And it was very helpful feedback. There's some good suggestions in here, but also I was pleased that to see overall that the librarian was extremely complimentary of the change. They liked the fact that it was easy, that it is helpful, because it was that thing that I was hoping we would have here, that it was a helpful reminder for that librarian of what they should be evaluating for. Again, as you can see, there's a long list of things that we're checking off there, but that is because reference transactions are actually kind of complicated. I think sometimes we take for granted the number of different skills and the beats we have to remember to try to hit on when we are working with a patron to make sure we're covering the bases. We're not leaving them behind. We're not leaving any things out, that we are throughout maintaining that professional tone and helpfulness that we want to project, and all those things. Very, very complicated, actually, thing to do. So she found it helpful to have this kind of guidance and reminders, and it focused her attention. She says it gave me focal points to look for, as opposed to just a general sense. So I felt that this feedback was very reassuring from this librarian, that this is at least something that we should continue working on and iterating and improving. And I'm looking forward to doing more of this evaluation and involving more of our staff in the evaluations. So I think we're off to a good start with it. What we will like to do now is respond to any questions that anybody has about the presentation that we just offered. And then we did share, or Beth shared for us, some questions in the chat that are discussion questions that we were hoping to have at the end, because we've got this golden opportunity here with a bunch of wonderful fellow employees at the TAMU system libraries who are interested in this kind of work. And we thought it would be nice to spend some time just sharing some thoughts about reference services. So if you didn't see the questions, they are in the chat. Please feel free to scroll up. I think at this point you'll have to scroll up and review them. And then if you see one you'd really like us to start with, type that number in to the chat and we will follow your lead on what discussion questions to consider for the next portion of our time together. But for right now, if you have specific questions about the chat evaluation protocol that we shared today in our experience, we would be happy to. Can you share what software? Yes. Aida, do you want to, you were the one that created the survey.
Yes, we used a Springshare.
The LibWizard in Springshare?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a second question there for you, Lisa and Aida.
Mm-hmm. Aida, do you want to take a crack at Sarah's question first? She says, could you estimate about how much time you're spending per week or per day evaluating chats? Do we do it all at once at the end of the month, or is it more spread out?
So every day, since my main function is to review the chats or the chat in general, what I do is as soon as I hear a chat coming in, after that interaction happens, I go to the transcript. So basically I do it as they happen. I just read them. If there's anything that I need to bring to the GA's attention, I do it. If not, I'll just keep it in mind. And then for the evaluation itself, to submit the evaluation, we do it every month. So what we do is that we wait until the end of the month to see how many evaluations, how many chat interactions we had. And then we estimate 1/3 out of that. And then we ask volunteers to help us out. And that's how we separate it. So short answer, we do it at the end of the month, but also for me, I do it as they're coming in. I hope
Yeah,
that.
and I'm sorry. My bad.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is also something that I think is we may be looking at in terms of, for example, the 1/3 rule of looking at 1/3 of the chats. We may increase that. We didn't want this to seem overwhelming when we started, so we wanted to kind of start slow. And we are also asking for people from within our Ask Us staff to volunteer to review. At some point, this may become something that we ask everyone to participate in. And so, you know, that aspect of it may change, but for right now, that's how we're organizing it. And I can say for myself, I have reviewed some of these and I spend less than an hour reviewing them and submitting the form for each one for my set of chats. And I kind of tend, like, where since I'm reviewing a section of chats that happened in April, I'll be reviewing those in May, and I would just do them, you know, ideally just sit down and get them done. I'm not sure everybody does it this way. Thank you for your vote, Tiana, appreciate it. Okay, looks like Aida got Kimberly's question, and you're welcome, Sarah. Thank you for the question. Any other questions or just thoughts? Oh, Kimberly, Aida actually answered above. It's Springshare's. Oh no, sorry. It's the Springshare chat software, LibAnswers. We Springshare for everything. LibGuides. We have LibAnswers. LibWizard for surveys and things like that. We use LibCal for calendaring and event schedule. All right, another vote for question 2. Before we segue into the discussion, do you guys have any other questions? Or is there anybody out there? I'd love to hear this. Think this is crazy.
It is. Well, what we can do is start the discussion and maybe more questions will come up. How's that? Okay, overwhelmingly, question number 1 is the most popular one.
All right.
And that is, how does your library review your reference services?
All righty. So we've been kind of describing how we are reviewing our services. And so we were interested in hearing from the group what kinds of chat evaluations y'all are doing or chat reviews y'all are doing. And you can feel free to respond in the chat window, or if you want to unmute, I think we can do that. You can feel free to share with the group. But how are y'all doing this at your libraries?
Good morning, everybody. I'll chime in. This is Kimberly from Prairie View A&M University. We don't, first of all, we don't use the lib wizard or lib chat. We just use the Springshare LibGuide. So our library reference services is done through what's called this library H3LP, which is like help. And I put that in the chat. And what does your library review your reference? How does your library review your reference services? What I did is I created an FAQ guide. So every month when I have to do my reference monthly reports, I pull up the chat. And if it's constantly the same question over and over again, then what I do is I create an FAQ, and it's actually a LibGuide that we have that actually will go in, and it'll have like the most frequently asked questions, because we have some new librarians that don't get an opportunity to go through all of the aspects of knowing the university quickly. So it's really nice for them to have this little FAQ that they can go and look at. And that way, when they're on chat, they can literally be able to see some other types of questions and how did we answer them. So they could probably be able to answer them correctly as well. And it's really turned out successful. The only thing is we don't get a lot of chats. Our reference librarians, we're all like boots on the ground, where students would rather just walk over to the library and ask us questions rather than try to get us all on chat and try to talk to us through chat half the day. So the questions that I do get, I really put them in our FAQ, and then we're able to go back and look at some of those questions and be able to have an aspect to where we can say, okay, this is a great way to answer those questions. And that FAQ has really worked out successfully because it allows that opportunity to where we can be able to go in and have them to say, these would be really good information. So I'll even put in the link of some of the chat that we do so you can see how that looks.
That's great. Yeah, I think we on our slide with our statistics for our service, we had over 15,000 views of our FAQ, and I think you're absolutely right. You think first of the FAQ as answering patron questions, but that's not all of those 15,000 views were patrons. It also really helps our student assistants and our graduate assistants and us, to remember those little details that we just will not. There was a time when all of our university services had to move out of their building and they went all over campus. And of course, there are things people need to find. We would never have remembered where all those different services had moved. And so, you know, it's great to have an FAQ to record that information, and it's just as useful for staff as it is for patrons, for sure. Yeah, thank you for sharing about that, Kimberly. We definitely have seen a big drop off in our in-person chat or research help since the pandemic. Really is where that just dropped off a cliff. And now a lot of our classes are hybrid, and a lot of students aren't even coming to campus. And so we really are seeing a preference now for our users to use chat over coming in person. And I agree with the person who said they wish they had more in-person interactions, because I really miss that a lot as well. Yeah, Tiana also says using our FAQs during chat sessions. Absolutely, super useful. And the library DIY that Aida mentioned earlier is also kind of an outgrowth of the FAQ, or it's sort of going to be a hand in hand. So it's not as simple as just little answers to very specific questions, but it's a little bit more information on how do I do research, and how do I find a journal in my field, and that kind of thing. So that's going to be like taking the FAQ, but then expanding it to be a little bit more instructional as well as informative. And so I appreciate Aida bringing that idea to us, and really looking forward to seeing that being implemented here.
And I do want to mention that that idea was originally from the University of Portland, but also it was implemented at Texas A&M in San Antonio, which I was part of working with it. So that's something that I brought up from there.
Yes, that's awesome. And thank you, TAMU-CC, for working with Aida on that project. We're helping her get going on it. Tim asked the question, are our chat numbers going up or going down? They're going down. They're going down. I hope, but that we can, with a reference services coordinator who can really focus on growing the service. And Aida's been great about getting out into the community and meeting with our students and creating publicity materials for our Ask Us service. I really hope we can turn around or maybe level that off a little bit, but I have noticed something, and I'm curious to see if other people have noticed this too, that some people don't know we are real, I really think, because they ask questions in a weird way now, like they just throw in words rather than writing like they're talking to somebody, and then they just leave when we are done. They don't say goodbye, they don't say thank you or anything. It's very different from the way chats were, I'm old, when we first started doing chat. And I think that's going to be another challenge for us, is the chatbot thing and people's expectations, that they want that chatbot speed and that chatbot's immediate satisfaction. It's hard to reproduce with a real person in chat. So,
and adding to that, they might think that we're like ChatGPT, because there are many times that they just copy and paste the whole assignment instructions, wondering that we're going to reproduce the essay for them. And when we're like, hi, I'm actually Aida, I'm a librarian here, they get disappointed and they just disconnect. And then they send the question again seconds later, hoping it's going to be, again, a chat robot. So that's funny. That's something that we have been realizing more lately.
so true. That is so true.
Follow-up question. Have you noticed that the hits on the FAQ page have increased?
Oh dear. I think they have, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember for sure for last year, but I believe so. I know when we were putting this together, I was quite surprised at the number of hits. And we have not grown it that much. And we're adding a few questions every year, but we haven't added that.
A way that I notice is that most of the time, if not all the time, I have the chat open, and then on the next tab, I have the FAQ in case they ask a question that we already have there. And that's how I train our GAs to do it as well. So anytime that they need an answer that it's already in the FAQ, they send the link. So that way the students click on that FAQ and they get the answer.
I'm just looking at our chats to see if there's any other questions. I see that some other people have noticed the same thing. So it's, yeah, we live in interesting times. Somebody also voted, I think, for question number 2, asking what do you think is an essential part of reference training? If you have thoughts about what you think is a really essential part of reference training, please share. I think for me, one of the most essential parts of reference training is the not letting the person, not assuming that I understand their question right. So I've got to explore with the person and really delve into what they're looking for, not taking questions at face value, I think. And that when I was talking about how you learn, the things you learn in library school and also just by working as a librarian, that to me is one of the most important ones that often our GAs don't quite get. And they do tend to just, they see the question, they go for it, and they never stop to think any deeper or ask any other questions because they think they know. And so often we don't know. So that would be my vote there. Aida, do you have a thought about that? What you think is the essential part of reference training?
I think it is seeing the GA's point of view, because many times when I'm talking to them, I'm using library terms like let's create a ticket or let's create an FAQ. And since I use it all the time, I assume that they know. So that's when they ask the question, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, let's reward this, or using similar terms so that they can understand better.
There's a lot of library jargon.
Mhm.
For sure. Shadowing in person, Tiana says. Yes, we do shadowing. Aida, do you want to talk about how we do shadowing in chat?
Yeah, so actually we have a new GA that started in May. So after doing the reference training, which goes for about three days, I break it down into an hour each day. After that, they start shadowing immediately. I introduce them to our team. They get their login into the chat. And then as soon as someone has a chat, they're gonna add them into the conversation, and they can only see what they're doing. They don't have to interact. But another thing that I do ask for them as an assignment is to just read the chat transcripts. So every time that they're at the desk and they're logged in, also read a couple of chat transcripts a day and let me know if they have any questions. And that way they also get familiar to how other people interact. And I tell them it's just like how you're answering questions in person, but it's like online, just type very friendly as you would usually type. And then after 2 to 3 weeks of shadowing, they start going solo. For example, we have our GA who's going to start next week, but I do let them know there's always going to be a team of librarians logged in, just as a backup. If you need to take a break, if you have any questions, just send it into the chat. And I'm also logged in pretty much during 8 to 5 every day, just to make sure that I'm there to support them. But also I mentioned to them, don't feel pressured in answering a question if you don't feel comfortable. Let us know or ask for their contact information. That way you can create a ticket afterwards and we can reach out to them.
I love that feature of Lib Answers where you're doing the Lib chat and you can turn it into a ticket that then can become a way to connect a librarian with a patron, or just to hold that question while you do further research to get back to the patron. It's really nice to be able to do that. The shadowing is neat because they can transfer a call to you, but just stay in the call, or you can transfer to them, but you're just adding them. I always ask the patron first, is it okay? Our GA joins our conversation so that, she can learn or he can learn. And then, they're just sort of along for the ride. And I find it's helpful to have them actually in the conversation as well as doing the transcript reviews afterwards, because there's a rhythm to chat interactions. And it's nice for the GA to kind of feel that rhythm and experience that as an observer rather than just, reading it after the fact. So yeah, we do think, Tiana, I agree with you, shadowing is super, super helpful. Anybody else? Thoughts about an essential part of reference training that we haven't touched on yet? I'm watching the chat. Or feel free to unmute
I think we can move on to the third question.
Okay.
Has an in-person or chat interaction gone wrong? And how was it managed? I think we've all suffered that one. Right.
Aida, do you have an example to share for that one?
I do, and I would say, and this happened to the co-op librarians that worked after hours. I tend to read the chat interactions from the past evening, and one of them, I don't remember exactly what the question was, but as soon as the librarian introduced herself as being a co-op librarian from Seattle, the student was triggered, and the person was just going off on the librarian, which is unfortunate. And the librarian wasn't even answering anything. She just said, please, let's remain respectful. But the person kept going off, and then they just disconnected. So yeah, that was unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. The person just thought everybody on the West Coast was awful, and they wanted to tell this librarian that she was awful for living on the West Coast. And it's felt bad for them, but the librarian handled it beautifully. To think of a good example of an in-person or chat interaction going wrong. I mean, we've had people who want to just hop in and be, you know, rude or vile or, you know, offensive just for kicks. That happens. I had the experience with one of my younger librarians, newer librarians. This happened to them, and she was so upset by it. Just, you know, just had never experienced anything like that before. And it made me realize that because I'm a video gamer, that sort of thing just doesn't bother me, because I've seen it everywhere so many times, you know, in online communications, and it just, so it made me step back and think, you know, this kind of thing, if you have not interacted with that before, or had that done, you know, with you before, it's extremely upsetting. And it was a reminder for me that we have to take care of our librarians in those situations and protect them. So there's no question about what we do in situation. We block them. I saw a raised hand. I think Tiana raised your hand.
So we have had people who have tried to game the system, meaning trying to get us to do work for them instead of doing work themselves. And so they may log on, get one person, maybe they don't get the answer they want, and so they try again and again. And so, like, over time, we got to realize, because sometimes we may consult with each other and ask questions like, wait a minute, I just had that question, and this is what I told them. So I hesitated to bring it up because I don't know that we found a perfect solution, except by kind of dealing with this person and we start communicating, then we figure out, and then we're able to put the brake on earlier.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that as well. And yeah, they want you to do their assignment for them. They don't want to do the research themselves, and they don't want to like work on you to work with you to improve on their, you know, research skills or whatever. They just want you to give them the articles or, you know, tell them the answer. And it's like, it's not going to happen. But yeah, definitely.
And Maria in the chat said, at another school, we've had students ask goofy questions, even inappropriate questions. Initially, we were giving them warnings. As it persisted, the director would ask us to close if it wasn't a reference question, which is, I think it's a good way. And also, I wonder if you have the capability of blocking them in the chat, because we do on the lib chat, we can just block the server.
Yes, we have that ability. I think initially some of my colleagues over at that school, we were kind of scared to lose the reference or, you know, statistics wise. We wanted to keep those numbers, but yeah, we get those a lot. And it just became a whole abusive situation.
So frustrating. This is why we can't have nice things, right? We had some students, they were at a Cal Allen High School, which is a, high school in the greater Corpus Christi area. And they were just doing it for kicks, it was really frustrating. And there were multiples of them. I kind of had a feeling maybe they were in a computer lab together, egging each other on. Save us. All righty, how are we doing on time? We have a couple more minutes, I think.
We're doing very well. We have 10 minutes left. So we have about 3 to 4 more questions to ask in the discussion list. But please, if you have questions, please ask them, because as it always happens, we always run out of time. And actually, we only have 5 minutes.
Right.
We end this session at 10:55. So please get your questions and ask them.
And since our last question has to do with reference statistics going up or down, and Tim had asked us about the situation with ours, I would kick that back out to the group. I would love to hear from y'all. What's going on with your reference statistics, and have you tried anything to move that needle in the other direction? I think every year that I've been here, they've gone down a little bit, just, and then of course, big plunge during the pandemic. Yeah, I'm curious if you guys know, are you doing more or less reference work than you used to do, going down? Yeah.
I'll jump in. Here in Cushing, I was going to say, I think our reference questions are probably up. We get contacted either through chat, or we'll get contacted through our emails and phone calls. But we're the special collections library, so we're going to be, I think, we have more in-depth research questions, more hands-on questions that perhaps they're coming through chat. And so that's just my take on it for a special collections library. I think our questions are up.
Which is exciting. I mean, I like the idea, that maybe either people are just doing more research, or maybe professors are working more with their students to get them to do actual research with primary sources, which is, y'all are a great source for that kind of stuff. And that would be very exciting to hear. So, yeah.
A lot of them, it's, through the outreach we've been trying to do, finally realize what we're here and not just a building that they walk past from class A to class B. But again, for primary source instruction, we're having more and more professors, especially recent hires, are bringing their classes in for that type of instruction. And then we get the follow-up afterwards.
Great. Anybody else? We're almost to the end of our time.
We are. We have 3 minutes left, and so I think there's time for one more question.
Right. Maria, that's really fun to hear that you've got faculty stopping by and asking for questions. That's exciting. It's nice to see faculty connecting with the library. Okay, then the last question, super quick. Do you involve students in your reference services? What's fun and what is challenging about that? We, to date, have only used graduate assistants in our reference, but Aida and I have been talking about extending some of our training to our student assistants to get them a little bit engaged. We're always looking for ways to enrich the work that our student assistants do. And so we are considering doing that, but I'm curious. So you guys, are you all librarians on your desk? Do you have students helping you when you're offering your information services? Librarians at TAMU, Texarkana. Okay, great. I heard somebody, sorry.
We had Gants back when I first started in the late 1990s. So been a while, and they were an asset, right? In many, many ways. Things have changed. And so I am now in a different position. I've been in outreach for like 10 years, but I do know that my colleague who was more recently working with GANTS, he did supervise GANTS, but now we're in a period of transition. And so even that has changed, right? So I'm not sure how we will use graduate students in the future.
Interesting. Yeah. We had some trouble hiring them after the pandemic, but that seems to have turned around and we're having better luck with hiring. Student workers at A&M San Antonio, trained to refer tougher questions. Referring, that's the challenge of training. That's a big one, right? Is getting the students to refer appropriately. So that's great that you're able to get that message across to your students that they're not shy to refer questions. So I think we're at our time.
We are out of time, and so I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And I believe Aida and Lisa, did you have your email addresses up there so that people can contact you?
Yes, I can go back one slide. Our email addresses are here. Would love to hear from y'all.
Okay, and thank you. Thank you very much. And also, I did put up the survey link. It is not for individual sessions, it's for the conference as a whole. So please still feel free to fill out that survey. And thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Aida, any last words?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for your support. Really appreciate your help.
Oh, I love this conference.
I'm so glad. That's great to hear. Awesome. Have a great day, everybody.